canceled the last two Smart Growth Committee meetings due to lack of a quorum. So I will call this meeting to order. We have attending
Justin Pelland.
Justin Pellin,
Randy Iser,
Mark Dunn.
Andrew Gnatic.
All right.
and you have one on.
And do we have Kayla? Hi, Kayla. And
Kayla Lubrio.
I think that's us.
Does.
Yeah, Andrew's there and here.
I'm gonna come off of there.
Yeah. So. Without Kyle from PVPC, I think what we were gonna do 2 meetings ago was to pick up and try to wrap up where we had left off with the FAQs. I'd like to say I've done a lot on that. I'm not, but I do know Justin has done more than his share.
Yeah, so before we get into that, I forgot, but I just pulled up the agenda and we were gonna do a whole formal agenda from now on.
Okay.
First was public comment, which we don't have anybody from the public.
Yes, that's right. We should start with public comment, and tonight we don't have anyone.
Second was approval of minutes, which I think we got
Yes, we got a
4
bunch of.
months worth from spring, is that? I forget who said that.
Everybody had a chance to look over this. Any concerns, any corrections?
No issues for me. It was a long time ago, so my memory was stretched.
No, I think, great job, Kayla. I would entertain a motion to accept all the minutes as submitted.
So moved.
I'll second.
Second, all right. All in favor by roll call?
Aye.
Aye, Justin.
Hi, Randy.
Aye, Mark.
Hi, Andrew.
All right, so that's unanimous. We're cruising through the agenda.
Next one on here was Deb had asked us to add before she unfortunately resigned from the committee, but it's discussion about the Gazette article from a couple months back.
And that article was, basically, she was concerned with the negative aspects of that, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
I believe so, but I think when she asked us to add it to the agenda, I think her concern primarily was the sort of the procedural requirements for things like that. I'm not sure. I don't want to speak for her, so I don't want to try to.
Well, she's not here, so we're gonna have to either pass over or try to figure something out to talk
Interpret,
about. Yeah.
interpret, yeah.
You know, I remember one of her concerns being that the people that she felt were totally against it and maybe didn't understand what we were trying to do. And my opinion of that is no matter what we do, we're always going to have people that don't agree with us. And we can't really belabor that kind of stuff because it's just not worth it, number one, and we're not going to change people's minds more than likely, so.
And we're a volunteer board. We're not paid to be here, so our time is what we're giving, and responding to things like that is not on the agenda. Although I would say that we did decide to do these FAQs, to do a list of frequently asked questions to basically to debunk some of the more glaring misunderstandings in some of those survey responses. You know, for example, things like, we shouldn't pay for this. Well, the town isn't paying for the affordable housing. This is, we're looking for where would we want to, encourage, how would we want to tweak our zoning to encourage more housing of what type in what areas? And this is what not that we would build it, but to make it, encourage the private sector. So it's not coming out of the taxpayers' dollars. And one of the other things that I was going to address was infrastructure. I met with Scott McCarthy, and I have to find my notes, but basically, I think if I remember correctly, it's been over a month now. I thought he said that we had plenty of capacity in our sewer system, barring, a few put a World Trade Center up instead of the Hampshire Mall, you know, if you put some huge thing, but I think we're maybe in the range of 70% capacity. So there is room for that, and I don't think any of us are looking to add that much to endanger that.
Well, I also think, Mark, that if, no matter what happens in this town, development should move forward in some way, shape, or form, and that's always gonna have an impact on our infrastructure, so we just have to be aware of where we're at as far as capacity goes, and we may get to the point where we have to limit what we can allow, because we don't have the ability to deal with the sewer or whatever. I mean, we're gonna lose some capacity, I'm sure, now that the new senior overlay district got expanded. I would imagine that there's gonna be some increased use or demand on the sewer system through that.
Right.
And I have no idea what a 1% increment of what, our capacity, what does that equate to?
Right.
Is that a house? Is that 10 houses? Is it whatever? So we just have to understand what we've got. And we are also trying to work out something with Amherst so that they would take some of our sewage flow. So that would take some of the burden off of us and increase our capacity as well. So that's also a possibility.
Do we know how much the mall and like the retail sector uses now or adds to our capacity?
I wouldn't imagine there's a
I
lot.
don't know.
I mean,
No idea.
I think it's usually based on fixture counts,
Yeah.
and those are significantly fewer per square foot than the housing building would be, so the
Yeah.
concern is legitimate. What I would say the infrastructure piece is that this is the point of planning. If the town plans for growth of, say 100 housing units in the next 5 years, we can plan for the growth of infrastructure to support it. And then often, you can kind of come up with a financial model that works with developers to help fund capital improvements like that. So there's a few different ways to slice it, but it starts with a plan. And if the plan is what we're working on, putting in a zoning ordinance or zoning amendment or a 40R district, that plan can feed into some of our infrastructure decisions with DPW, with sewer, with water. And I think all of that is kind of like, nothing's impossible. It's expensive, sure, but if we plan for it, we can accommodate it.
I think some of the other ones were schools, but I think that was debunked by the, I don't know, I could try to, I'm on.
I think the superintendent,
The superintendent spoke to my diversity committee. I don't know that she spoke to us. Has she come here?
no,
She
No.
went in front of the Housing and Economic Development
Yes.
Committee 6 or so months ago. So
Right, and then she just like a month ago came and spoke to the diversity and said that actually, if we got more, I mean, it's complicated, all the math, but if we had more students from here, it would displace some of those that are choicing in, and we actually get compensated by the state more for in-town. So it would actually be beneficial. And that she also said that it would have to be, an enormous increase to overflow our capacity. And obviously, as those numbers go up, they could hire more teachers or, administrators as those dollars go up proportionally. So these are the kind of things that, that's how I think we were looking to respond to the survey and the things in the article.
I'll add on the conversation about the article. I mean, obviously the free press is a fundamental First Amendment right. So you have to understand that they report on what they see and they watched our recordings and they reported on it. But to anybody who, a member of the public who might be watching now, I'd encourage everybody, whether you agree or disagree or have some, mix of opinions in the middle, but you're welcome to come engage with this committee. We have a public comment section now as part of our rolling agenda. So if anybody would like to come and ask questions, say their piece, like participation is encouraged. And I think that's, I don't want the article to stand as an example of, what Hadley is. I'd rather people show up and actually show what Hadley can be, show us how many people care about these initiatives and how many people want their voices heard. We're only, 5 people. And so I think there's a limit to what we can accomplish, but the more people that come to the table, the better off we'll be.
I agree, 100%.
Thank you, well said. Now we move
So
on.
Any
to
further
the next.
discussion on that before we close it?
I don't think so. Again, unfortunately, Deb's not here to, drill into what she was trying to get at, so, and it's been, it's too far over the dam for me to remember, so.
Fair enough. Next one on here was it's discussion on public outreach with resident survey respondents who shared contact information. I think this was more just like us trying to brainstorm how we can use that contact information, a mailing list or some other updates for what we're doing so they can stay informed.
This is people who asked for information. We're not,
There's 100 or so people who.
we're not spamming them,
So we have email addresses for that.
Yeah.
And we don't have it set up in a group yet that we can just
No,
hit a
not at the
button
moment.
and send an email.
It'd be great. I don't know how to do any of this on the internet, but if we could create like a listserv where people can go and subscribe and, continue to add themselves if they
Talk
want
to
to.
that guy over there.
You mean like a newsletter?
Kind of like a mailing list that people can go add themselves to. Like, so if we take the names or the email addresses that we got and create a list, is there a way so that, somebody can go online and say, I'd like to hear more and then subscribe themselves?
Yeah, I mean, there's free services like, I mean, I could think of some on the top of my head, but you have my email, right?
Mhm.
I think I have your email too. I'll email the committee some good choices that are either very low cost or free. If this is the free, I would assume.
Yes.
So
Free's good.
yeah, free's good. There are things out there you can just do like a quick, hey, here is a thing, you put your email in, we'll send you updates whenever we can.
Okay.
And you can another way to do it is ask Jennifer to send out updates for town news. So you could probably do both. Both is good because you can not only you're gonna reach the people who want to know, you're gonna reach the also townspeople as well. And then obviously we can always share stuff on our social media platforms as well.
That's great. How do others feel about that sort of like 3-prong approach, using the sort of town news, the social media accounts, and then a elective list service of some kind?
I mean, I'm assuming you want to get the word out to as many people as possible, not just people who want to sign up for a newsletter.
Right. This is it's about transparency. We want
Yeah,
people to be able to
exactly.
see
You definitely want to try to reach out to as many people as possible.
do we want to send them like after we have a meeting and Kayla, after we approve the minutes? They're otherwise being posted on a website that someone would have to go drill and find. We could just share those on there. Or when we get information from Kyle, we could share that on that list.
Mhm.
And then if you set it up so that people can enroll in that list, yeah.
And we could send them the link to the recording of our meeting,
Right.
so.
Yeah,
Yeah, that sounds like a great plan of attack. Alex, maybe if you can circulate some of those options, we can plan on the next meeting to review and discuss what you think is the best.
yeah, and then obviously something that has a unsubscribe option too. I know.
And I think they all do.
Yeah, I recently signed up for a free month of the State News House or State House News or something, yeah. OMG, I must have had like 8 emails a day.
That's the busiest building in the whole city.
Oh, so when they said your 30 days are expiring, I was like,
Not gonna come fast enough.
yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to digest all that,
Yeah.
even if you didn't have anything else to do.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, that's good.
Any other discussion on the contact process?
I think, like you said, we can hear from Alex and take it up at the next meeting and come up with a plan for that.
Yeah, I won't be here tomorrow, but I'll definitely, like Wednesday and for the rest of the week, I'll look for some stuff for you guys.
Great. Next agenda item was the PVCP, or PVPC, resident survey summary report, which I know we've received a copy of. I reviewed it, but without Kyle here, I didn't know how much detail we want to go into.
And I think it makes sense for him to be here
Yeah, I would
to
maybe
help us
just
through that.
table that until he joins us.
Okay. And that takes us to the meat of it, the FAQs. Which you should all have a copy of the sort of the second draft, I'll call it, that I circulated a couple weeks back, I think, for one of our last meetings. And the only thing in addition to that is there's the infrastructure piece that Mark was talking about earlier. And then Andrew shared a piece on emergency services, which I have available here, but hadn't circulated to the committee yet, because I just made some edits and I wanted to make sure Andrew was comfortable with them. So I can, well, I don't know. Okay. I don't know how to put that on the screen.
Ask Alex.
Log in to Zoom.
Or if you send it to Andrew, Andrew could share, or, yeah, I guess you could share, right?
Yeah, I
So,
don't think I'm gonna be able to get on Zoom. I only have a work account.
Oh, well, you don't need to be logged in to go on Zoom.
Let's see. Actually, no, I'm not gonna be able to.
Send it to me, I'll put it up.
We
for you
use
guys.
Teams, and my Zoom account is,
Oh,
why you're not coming up here? What's your email?
LA. MA.
Oh,
Yep, there I am.
Just had to type 6 letters for you to show up.
Blame the French.
Won't do it.
Sent that to you.
All right, give me 2 minutes to log into my email here.
While we pull that up, and that's really just for the sake of Andrew's piece, which nobody has seen yet. I just want to make sure it's visible for anybody watching the recording. For the other pieces that have been circulated, I made whatever edits we had talked about after the first review, and then circulated those. I don't know if anybody's had a chance to reread it. Are there any comments on any of the sections?
Back, find it.
I think I would have sent it around 10:17.
All right. In the midst of all my state house news. There are just all these unopened.
Yeah, can you see the screen? I think you left for a minute. That's okay. Screen sharing's on, so you just tell me what to do and I'll do it.
Well, we can go through section by section if you would prefer. We're only 20 minutes in, so this is remarkable.
Yeah.
So yeah, this first section was really just to try and dispel myths about what affordable housing means, and some of this dovetails into the emergency services with low income housing, but just generally trying to provide the information about sort of what we talk about a lot, Mark, which is the uppercase A, lowercase a, and sort of the government programs affordable, and then just sort of market affordability. So hopefully this section, I know it's lengthy, but you can see the reformatting from the last conversation. We have kind of the executive summary. So it's the question in a paragraph, small paragraph for an answer, and then an expanded answer. So people can get as much or as little information as they need. Do we want to keep rolling through, or you guys want to scan it as we go through?
I mean, I can see what it is in general. I don't think we need to read it
Okay.
word for word.
All right. Next question was, why is housing access and affordability such a pressing issue? This one boils down to supply and demand, which I think a lot of people have been saying left and right, but tried to show the actual data so people can see where that supply and demand gap occurs. So hopefully that makes sense.
And I think that that's the main reason we're proposing this, is because we know that in this area, demand is huge
Mhm.
and supply does not come anywhere near meeting that demand.
Right, and these charts are national data from the census, so this is, sort of aggregated, but in Hadley specifically, I'd say if you look at our housing starts, we're probably well below the average for national. I think East Street Commons is the only, I don't know, I would call it medium-sized development I can think of in recent years.
Yes, most definitely.
All right, next question kind of ties to that. Why does Hadley need more housing specifically? A lot of this just comes straight from the housing production plan, master plan, all the data that was in there. So it's really nothing new, I don't think. Aging inventory, high percentage of single family homes, lots of sort of older people, shifting demographics and whatnot.
Yeah, I remember reading through this and being very impressed. I was like your Shepley skills were showing through.
Yeah, professional writing is something I've had to do a lot of. Next one was what is smart growth and why is Hadley considering it? This, I think, was our recognition that the term smart growth might be undefined for a lot of people and may not know what that means, and the word growth and smart growth. And just rather than people jumping to their own conclusions, this talks about what Kyle describes to us, that it's an idea, not a policy. Oh, and I also included the map at the bottom, which is just to show how many 40R districts are actually in Massachusetts. There's quite a few. Next one was who will benefit from new housing in Hadley? And this is kind of like a multi-part question and answer, but this was responding a lot to the survey comments about, is this going to go to students? Is this going to go to homeless people? This is, those kind of like more inflammatory comments, but we want to actually give the information so that they can understand what we're reacting to. So this, broad question is intended to say new housing can benefit everybody. There's economic benefits, there's benefits to businesses, there's benefit to people, the cost of living. So we're trying to kind of show that you don't have to be a homeowner to benefit from new housing. You don't have to be a first-time home buyer to benefit from new housing. You don't have to be a business owner to benefit. The town benefits when we can build it well and build it right.
I just want to, when you say when we build and build it right, not us, we, the town, aren't building it. We're just enabling the private sector, the market to build it.
Right.
Instead of being prohibitive, we're saying, all right, we're going to be more towards the encouraging side of the range in these particular areas for this type of housing. And that's what we're trying to determine with this group, is where and of what shape and form.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, our former member Mike used to be fond of saying, we can do all of this and doesn't mean anybody's going to want to build anything.
Right.
He's not wrong.
What the market bears, right.
All right, next one was, will new housing construction go to homeless populations? In short, we're kind of saying the same thing for this, for the students and for the migrant population question. Is just that we don't design zoning for a specific subset of people. The only exception is 55 plus communities, which are permitted. Any other class of people, especially protected classes under the Constitution, we can't regulate against or for that matter. So tried to also give some data here about homelessness and what homelessness looks like. I think that's a pretty common misconception in our day and age. Is homelessness is thought of, when you think of homelessness, you think of panhandlers, you think of people on the corner sleeping under tarps on the ground, right? That's one form of homelessness, but homelessness comes in a lot of different forms, including children who don't have a secure place to live, or families who are staying in someone's spare room as opposed to having a house of their own. Like the definition of homelessness is actually pretty broad.
Yeah.
So I think trying to build a little empathy in this response, just to say that we're not talking about people on the corner. We're just talking about disadvantaged populations of people. They can benefit from housing, but it's not going to be built for them. It's just built for Hadley.
Yeah. No, I think there are definitely stereotypical beliefs of what a homeless person, there's a stereotypical joke, but I think you'll see professionals who are between jobs, their company downsized and they were just making ends meet, and so they, they get kicked out of their mortgage, and, things just, snowball.
Next one was on the kind of same question, but for migrant populations. Similar answer, that just the migrant crisis, as we're seeing it today, that is sort of being handled at a state level with state level policies. And, Hadley in particular in the current climate hasn't really had a say in how the state handles migrant populations. But I will say that at one of the select board meetings last fall, I think it was, our state senator had kind of spoken to the great job that Hadley has done stepping up to the plate to help house those people. So I think there's a lot of good work there already, and hopefully we can dispel some of the myths around the migrant populations.
I know it's gonna change with that January 20th. When, 8 years ago, my church went through the, renovation and building code to provide a permanent living unit for this woman who was not, hadn't gotten her paperwork in line, but her husband was here and her children were here legally, but she hadn't gotten her paperwork yet, and so she was taking sanctuary in the basement of our church, and then she ended up, they found a way to positively spin it that she was actually raising money by, she would cook like pierogies or something and sell them, people would buy, so who knows where we're gonna head.
That's the truth.
Yeah. Next one, basically same question, but about college student populations. And this one, we started getting a little bit into economics and the sort of the lengthy response here, but just trying to highlight that we live in a town that is nestled in a community of higher education institutions, and they form a pretty substantial percentage of our local economy, regional economies. And I've put some figures here about how much money those institutions actually inject into the economy at the state level, and I think somewhat locally. So hopefully that starts to build a little goodwill. And we may not be designing for college students, but I know there's a heavy anti-college student sentiment in town, and for understandable reasons, right? They sometimes don't make the best neighbors. But we wouldn't be as successful as a town as we were without the influx of money that college students bring into the region.
Some of the problems I've heard about the college student population is that it just makes it so single family homes are unattainable for for working families, that they tend, because college kids can they can pay more for the housing, so they can just get a few of them living together, and that's where from what I've heard, a lot of the problems with college kids comes from.
That's actually a really, really good point to discuss, because I think you're absolutely right, and I've heard the same sentiment, but it's almost like a chicken and the egg, right? Like if you had housing appropriate for college students, would they be living in single family homes?
If it was in a mixed use area, then there could be some bars or something in that district, they might be more inclined to live in that.
Right.
I'm hearing,
I think Amherst is gonna do U Drive, right?
yeah, right, but I know a guy who has a lot of houses and there's quite a bit of student rental. And he's telling me that the college kids are getting away from wanting to live in a single family house or a duplex or whatever. They want to go to the complexes where everything they need, as to Andrew's point, is there.
Right.
So there could be a shift in that. It'll be interesting to see how long it takes if it does indeed happen.
Yeah, I think Amherst is looking at doing one side of University Drive to zone it to encourage development. And I know that the university had been doing, or has done they call it a P3, public-private partnership. That's what they did a big housing project right on Comm Ave, so.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that is a huge part of the problem. UMass needs to cover the housing needs of all the kids they allow to come in. And because they don't, it puts the burden on the area and does take away a lot of the housing stock and drive prices up.
for the working Joe.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, it's a very real point of pain and stress. I'm hopeful that, proactive zoning solution will mitigate some of the pressures that problem creates. And
Mhm.
maybe we can find ourselves in a really great spot where we have, a healthy mixed use district with students and, elders can go walk around and, do their mall walking. There could be a future there where we coexist and it's successful.
Mhm.
I know there's a lot of excitement, ideas floating about repurposing some or part of the mall. I know that Molly went, and I went to see I went to one of the presentations. I think Molly went to all of them, that UMass design classes did to redesign the malls. There's an opportunity and there's a risk there, and I think, there was a developer that came before the planning board last year. Or actually, maybe it was Pyramid Mall themselves that showed an example that they had done out east. And just thinking about that myself, almost if you could do like housing style A and housing style B, however that works on that site to get adequate parking, et cetera. Maybe housing style A is separated from B, and housing style A appeals to the students because they might like being there with all the amenities of the mall. And then housing style B is a little quieter and maybe inward looking, and that's that could be the affordable units for the lowercase a, for the people that, we heard one woman stand up at town meeting and said she's lived all her life and wants to downsize and can't afford to stay here, and she's not the only one.
Right, right. Well, when East Street Commons was first proposed, there was huge excitement because people in town thought, okay, I can downsize. It's not gonna cost me an arm and a leg. Now it costs 2 arms and 2 legs.
And that was what did excite me about, on that note, his new proposition. He said he will build the affordable units, because on East Street, he paid instead, he did the payment in lieu.
Yeah, well, I also heard that when he started, he was gonna be high 3, low 400s. But then when people started coming in, they wanted more and more and more, which jacked the price up.
Mhm.
So, now you're paying $600,000-700,000 for stuff, and then that just drives a lot of people out of the market.
Yep, no longer affordable. This is great.
Next one is on the school system, which we talked about a little bit already, but just to recap, I forget the numbers, but we're somewhere around 50% capacity, maybe 60% capacity. So there's of foundation enrollment, in town students. So there's plenty of room to add more school-age children to town and have, virtually no impact on the school system outside of maybe staffing. And I think Superintendent McKenzie has kind of reiterated that in a number of different forms now. So it seems to be that myth hopefully has been dispelled.
Well, what Mark was talking about earlier, the fact that if the individual towns get their residents going to school versus school choice, it's a different financial situation. And I know the Chinese immersion school is proposing to expand, and Amherst and Northampton both are vehemently against it because of the financial burden that is placed on the towns. So there's got to be something to be said for keeping town resident kids going to their school in that town.
Yeah. Not to mention our demographics, if you follow the curve, right, we'll have no school-age children in town within 20 years. So
I was going to mention that the university is talking about the enrollment cliff.
yeah. Next one, what impact would new housing construction have on Hadley's property taxes? This is the one I think is the most interesting, but that's just me being a data nerd. The short version of this is that, if you actually look into how towns earn tax revenue, we really only have three mechanisms to earn revenue outside of property taxes, which we collect on every property. One is meals, one is hotels, and the third is cannabis. So those are our local options taxes. Restaurants, hotels, we directly generate tax revenue for every point of sale. Same with cannabis sales. So I think that's something that I hear a lot of misinformation or maybe misinformed opinions about. Commercial businesses are where we generate our tax revenue. It's just not true. For the restaurants it is, but for the retail, big box stores, the malls, that's all based on property value. And the trend nationally is that commercial property, specifically big box retail property, is being devalued, sort of progressively devalued. So town, and a lot of them are actually negotiating with assessor boards to get the valuation down to reduce their tax burden. So it's just you're sort of watching this diminishing return play out over time. So it's a really good case to be made in whatever zoning solution we decide to propose here. Prioritizing those three business models, those three business types will generate the most potential tax revenue for us.
More restaurants.
I also threw in a statistic in here, which is mixed use properties generate up to 10 times as much tax revenue as a big box retail would. So if you had an apartment building with an office space and some restaurants and a gym, you could earn way more revenue locally than you would just from the value of that property than you would for a big box store of the same size. Next one, Mark's going to fill us in here, but this is the infrastructure piece, which you kind of recapped a little bit earlier.
Yeah, there's water, there's
Oh crap.
sewer, there's schools, which we talked about.
Sorry, Alex, I did not send you the one with Andrews in it. That's the only reason I sent it to you, of course.
Okay,
Give me a second.
I'm gonna stop share for a moment while you said that. I have nothing to hide, I promise.
Oh, great. Okay, there it goes. My computer likes to freeze at the worst possible times. Coming your way.
Yep.
Just the last page. I do want to get that on the screen, but while it's coming up, Andrew, you want to maybe talk us through what you found in your research?
Yeah, so Chief of Police Michael Mason stated that he had no real concerns about any changes to calls, at least in our capacity to handle any calls stemming from increase in housing. Obviously, there's going to be an increase, but it's not going to be, in his opinion, it won't be an increase that we can't handle. Because right now there's some of the hotels had quite a few calls. I'm not sure on the data right now. I don't have it in front of me, but it shouldn't be anything that's necessarily going to strain our services to the town in general. It won't be concentrated. The calls will not be concentrated to one area.
I forgot to ask, but did the fire truck get approved?
It did.
Okay. Do we know what the ladder height is?
No,
75. Oh,
I don't remember.
That would be
It's either
anything
75
below
or
high
100.
rise if that's the case. So,
75 or 100, I don't remember.
I think we had a 75, we're getting 100 foot.
okay.
Let me double check.
Also to that point, I remember, Valley Development Corporation, the ones working to put together the funding for the Econo-Lodge conversion. And I remember the chief speaking to that and saying that they hadn't seen a marked increase with the unhomed, unhoused people there. And with what they were proposing with the 50-ish units there, they were also gonna have an in-house, I forgot what the term they used, but it's almost like a
Manager,
social worker kind of resolve things before they get to the
yeah,
level
of needing to call the police,
Yes.
the fire department, hopefully.
There's a lot of misconceptions that are just based on this idea of like affordable housing being like impoverished, crime-ridden,
of. Yeah,
Right,
blighted.
right,
Yeah, and
right.
so I mean, that's really where a lot of the concern comes from, but
Well, I think a lot of it too is, most of the people in this town have lived here all their life. And they're not aware of anything else other than what goes on in Hadley. And not to minimize their insight into the world, but when you don't go someplace else and pay rent or buy a house, and then, you go someplace where it's cheaper to live, and then you come back to Hadley and go, whoa, I can't afford that. My daughter and son-in-law, their mortgage is $750. They got lucky. Nobody can rent for that kind of money.
Yeah.
I don't even think that qualifies in the small A affordable.
Yeah,
So it just, you have to be able to look at other people, not just ourselves. And those of us that are fortunate enough to have a house and be able to pay the bills. Plenty of people that can't, and it's not because they're just those people. They're in a bad place.
many different circumstances that lead to that.
Right.
If we had unlimited time, we could go into the history of redlining and how that created, the quote unquote ghettos, and how that has perpetuated this myth that there's more violent crime in those areas, when it really was just that the federal government didn't back mortgages for anybody who was Black.
Right.
So there's a long history of
Oh,
land use and regulatory practices that have led to this.
Yeah.
But I think to your point, Randy, is like, you can't stay stagnant forever, right? And if we choose not to change, we're still going to get change. It's going to be the change we don't want. This is our opportunity to shape Hadley's future, and create an opportunity for people who, like us, who are fortunate enough to have found a place to live in town. We can create that opportunity for others and still maintain our agricultural heritage, our open space, our lack of development density in certain areas of town. I think there are priorities that seem in conflict with development of new housing, but actually we can dovetail them and create strategies that work towards both goals. And that's my position on this whole thing. And I hope that this frequently asked question document, once it's formally published and circulated, starts to get people thinking a little bit more critically about those concepts, so that we can start to come up with what we think that solution really is, rather than fighting each other about whether or not we should do anything. Let's talk about what we can do and then determine what we should do.
Yeah, we want to be ahead of the curve. A good example of that is, just came up, at the special town meeting with the accessory dwelling units. The state, in its ultimate wisdom, looked for the low-hanging fruit to help with the housing crisis, and they have forced down every town's throat that accessory dwellings shall be by right. And that's why we had to adjust ours to align with theirs, and maybe give us, some modicum of influence and control on that. So without our modified zoning, we would have just had no control, and you could just accessory dwelling anyway, so. And it's a real thing and it's coming, so let's be proactive. Anything else?
That fire truck is 100 foot that the town's getting.
Thanks, sir.
Yep.
I gotta go through and get rid of all this big house.
Any further discussion on the FAQs? Any sections in here that we feel need a little more work or?
Somebody did a really good job on that.
I have no idea who that could be.
That would be Mr. Justin, very, very, very professional.
I'll say I find the best work comes from groups, and I think, I forget, maybe it was Deborah, someone had suggested reformatting like an executive summary. The minute I did it, I was like, this is so much better. And visually, it's digestible. You can stop whenever you think you've read enough, but that was a great suggestion. Okay, well, no other comment there. The last, the next item was project progress update notes.
Provided by PVC to the chair.
I don't know what that is.
Yeah, I think we'll wait until.
I think that's called Kyle.
Kyle, yes, and then we have topics for future meetings. I think we're ready for Kyle to come back with his data and the next steps.
Do we want, I guess I don't know if this is a topic for a future meeting, but new members.
Yes, thank you, Andrew. Yeah, I have reached out to the Council on Aging asking if they have someone else that they would like to recommend to the planning board. The planning board is the appointing authority for this subcommittee, and so
Make an announcement at your meeting tomorrow night. I'll try to remember to make one at the select board meeting on Wednesday night.
okay.
Give me a blurb, I'll put it up on the TV and socials.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That'll just be,
Because I think the Council on Aging is a demographic that we will, it was a definite loss to lose Deb's voice at the table, so.
I was also gonna propose if we can locate someone finding a renter. I'd love to, and we didn't do a great job of getting the survey out to those folks, short of like the workarounds we figured out. I would just love to have someone's voice. I was a renter in Hadley years ago, so I'm a little out of touch now, given the financial landscape. I don't know if anybody knows a renter in town or. No. Maybe I'll reach out to a few people and see if I can't come up with a couple recommendations.
I don't know the people, but I was renting until I got married and moved in with my wife 2 years ago, a year and a half ago. So,
I will speak to the person I mentioned earlier about coming to a meeting and just explaining his situation / position on how this would affect him. And I can probably get him to come to the next meeting. He seems to be pretty gung-ho. I think he's trying to figure out what he's gonna do with his property, so try to get a feel for where this is headed, and we're not gonna be able to give him any definitive answers about anything, but at least we can talk with him, just to get a, as you said earlier, a different opinion on all of it.
Okay, well, that's actually a good segue. The last item on here is next meeting time and agenda. I think, I was gonna say 2 weeks, but I don't actually know if that's true.
is this a 2 or 3
Oh yeah, I have December 2nd.
Thursday month? December 2nd, that sounds right, yeah.
First Monday?
Yeah, because December 1st is a Sunday, so yeah,
Okay,
and then we would have the planning board on the 3rd, yeah.
On the 3rd, which is my birthday,
Oh,
so
you gonna turn 60?
6,
Oh,
just 6?
yes,
Wow, you're young.
I'll be double 6.
I just turned 63 this month.
Okay, and then in terms of agenda items for the next meeting, Kayla, are you taking notes? Just
I
lost-
have notes. So it sounds like things that will be added will be the new member, and then the public outreach with those who share their emails from the survey. Was there anything else?
Guest speaker, if we can,
Yeah.
if I can get him.
Possibly,
Public
yeah.
comment. We should probably put a bullet on there to review the final FAQ. I think, Mark, you still have,
Yeah.
few paragraphs to write, so we can review that and then give it the check mark and finish it.
Great. And do you know if Kyle will be at the next meeting? Because then I'll include the going over the report from PVPC and everything.
Yeah, I will ask him. He's been very absent. Hopefully he's coming up for air now.
Yeah, I think we're hoping he'll be here, Kayla. You
Yeah.
could probably just put it on the agenda, and if he doesn't come, we'll just pass over it.
Sounds good.
Okay.
All right, any, I guess the last item is just to adjourn, so
Is-
any other business?
Any other unforeseen?
Nope,
No?
not for me.
I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Seconded?
Seconded, all right. In favor, Justin,
Aye.
Randy,
Aye.
Mark, aye, Andrew,
I